Hi, alternates. Today was day 13 of the Karen reTrial, and we're still with Sergeant Yuri Buchenik, who returned for a second full day of cross-examination. And y'all, if you thought yesterday was messy, today was an absolute legal mudslide. Alan Jackson was locked in. Buchenik, not so much. From cringeworthy text messages to questionable evidence handling to awkward courtroom silences, and one very reluctant witness. Today had it all, and all with just one witness. So let's get into it. Alan Jackson, Karen Reed's defense attorney, came out swinging. And Buchenik, he came out evasive. Remember when I talked about all those awkward pauses yesterday? Well, they continued into trial today. Right out the gate, Jackson questioned Buchenik about the February 4th discovery of taillight fragments and a piece of evidence found by none other than Chief Burkowitz of Canton PD. Jackson asked words to the effect, did you know that Burkowitz had spoken to Brian Albert or Brian Higgins before that discovery? Buchenik answered, no, he didn't ask and he didn't know that. Then we get into evidence collection, and here's where it gets, you can say, dicey. On February 10th, Buchenik recovered more taillight pieces. He says that all evidence in a case is important, all of it, but he admits that these pieces were spread across 40 to 50 square feet, not exactly a tight cluster, and even though all evidence is important, when pressed for exact coordinates of where the evidence was found, Buchenik didn't log where those were, not with his cell phone, not with a camera, not even with coordinates. In fact, he said, even though he's a Marine veteran, he doesn't know how to plot coordinates. It was an interesting moment in court. Then at some point, as I was watching, I kind of appeared to daze off. And then I heard something about someone needing a dictionary. And the content was so good that I want you to hear for yourself how that interaction went down.
I'm sorry, English is like a third language for me, so if you can bring up the Webster's Dictionary, I can read it out.
You want me to pull up the Webster's Dictionary? You want to take a break real quick and pull up the Webster's Dictionary to define a word that you used in an answer about 40 seconds ago? We're working off of a theory, quote unquote. You said it, not me. You want me to go get a dictionary so we can figure out for the jurors what that word means?
Objection.
All right, sustained. Let's move on.
Can you believe that? Do you want a dictionary? I can't even believe that happened in court. A little after that exchange, Jackson pulled out an evidence bag photo, right? And he said, who bagged this? That's what Jackson asked. And Buchenik said, I did. He said, okay, so you bagged it. Who labeled it? At which point Buchenik said he didn't know, which was really odd. You could feel the jury's eyes widen as this interaction went down. You don't know who labeled your own evidence? Come on. Then Jackson said, okay, so riddle me this. If you bagged it, but you didn't label it, who could have labeled it? At which point, Buchenik is kind of like led into a corner. He rattles off these 4 officers, one of which is Michael Proctor. He just kind of like mumbles it at the end, actually. Jackson then goes on one by one. He goes, okay, so did so-and-so bag this? Or did so-and-so kind of like write this? And he says, no. Buchenik then responds no to each and every one of them. It's a bit confusing, but Buchenik defends his team, calling them trusted members. But Alan Jackson's face says it all. This is nonsense. Then the majority of the day was spent diving into some flirtatious and very personal text messages between Karen Reed and Brian Higgins. Now, Brian Higgins, for those of you who don't know, is a federal law enforcement agent and a former Boston cop. Now, real quick, Buchenik admits that he got these text messages during his investigation from an extraction, but it was an extracted list that he received directly from Brian Higgins, because they never needed to take Brian Higgins' phone to begin with. That's what he told Jackson. So let's put a pin in that, as I am sure it will come back. I'm not sure how, but I just have this feeling. Anyway, as Jackson is talking about those text messages, he then starts talking to Judge Cannoni. And I kid you not, when Buchenik is told that he will be reading the messages out loud, his eyes go full emoji. So let's talk about what's in these text messages, because for a very long time, Buchenik sat there reading them to the jury. Karen initiates the text messages with Brian Higgins, and she full-blown gets his number from someone else and starts texting him. They talk about weed whackers, bad breath, and how most couples don't even like each other. She says that she and John are never getting married. She even jokes that sharing a room with even a boyfriend is archaic. And I learned that even at John's house, she had like her own room, which is kind of weird, I think. I don't know. So during the text messages, Brian Higgins and Karen seem to flirt, and it appears that Karen invites Higgins over a few times. She keeps playing coy that it doesn't matter that she has a boyfriend, that they're not married, so it doesn't count. She also confirms that John saw her and Higgins together at some point while they're texting, and this text exchange, all of it started, I think it was January 12th. So at some point, Brian Higgins goes over to John's house and there's like a gathering, at which point Karen walks him out and John sees this. John then even asks her like, hey, like you guys are really close. Like, are you guys hooking up? During the text, we also learned that Karen is upset because during New Year's on vacation, I'm assuming it's New Year's from 2024 into 2023, John and the kids and her go on vacation. And John gets extremely drunk and she caught him all over some lady in the hotel lobby. We also hear that Karen isn't a big fan of the kids, meaning John's kids. She says that she never wanted kids, and now she feels kind of trapped. Now, trapped, those are my words, not hers, but that's the feeling that I get from these text messages. She also says that John's kids are spoiled, which is so weird to me because I gathered from her earlier text exchange with John. Remember, those were all read into the record. And remember that we heard that John was getting mad at her because she spoiled the kids. So now I'm confused. Are they generally spoiled or did Karen spoil them? I mean, this group of people just seem like kind of dishonest people. So, I mean, anyway, listen, no one's perfect, okay? I get it. We also learned that at some point, Karen beat cancer and underwent various surgeries in 18 months. I didn't know that. Brian Higgins is an Army vet. We learned that, but he doesn't let Karen forget that he's not just an Army vet. He's a combat vet. He makes sure to mention that 2 times because, I don't know, maybe he thinks it makes him cool. And then this is where it gets juicy. We learned that Karen planted a kiss on Higgins, and it appears, just from the context, that this happened just outside of John's house. But even though she's like, oh, John has cameras all over the house, and at this point, Higgins is like, should I be worried? Like, did your boyfriend see you kiss me? And Karen is like, oh, don't worry. I know where all the cameras are. So when I did that, I did it in a location where you could not see from the camera. Anyway. Then we see that Karen, at some point, she ghosts Higgins, and she ghosts him on January 23rd. And then when she walks into the Waterfall with John just after 11 p.m. on January 28th, there is Higgins after she ghosted him for 5 days now. And then while they're at the Waterfall, Higgins sends Karen a text message. The text message is sent at 11:32 p.m. and it simply reads, well, Karen never responds. Then the defense introduces another tidbit. Jackson says that at 12:20 a.m., Brian Higgins, sent John O'Keefe a text message that simply read, quote, "Are you coming here?" Jackson asked Buchenik, all right, so do you think that these messages are flirtatious? And Buchenik insists that they weren't. He said, oh, there's some that might be construed as flirtatious, but not all of them. No. Come on, man. You are losing major credibility points right now. Now, the timeline matters here, right? Karen ghosts Higgins from January 23rd through January 28th. Higgins texts John O'Keefe at 12:20 a.m. on January 29th, are you coming here? And then through this cross-examination, we learn that at 2:22 a.m., Brian Higgins calls Brian Albert. Remember, Albert Sr. is the homeowner of 34 Fairview. Now, I can't recall, actually, I do recall, this was objected to and basically sustained, so we were not supposed to hear that, but as I've said, you can't unring a bell. So there you have it. But get this, Buchenik admitted that there was no extraction done on Brian Albert Sr.'s phone. He didn't know about that 2:22 a.m. call between the two buddies, and the team never considered Higgins suspicious, even after those very intimate text messages with Karen. Then we learned that Higgins destroyed his phone. It's a quick statement, but still, what? why would Brian Higgins destroy his phone? I don't know. Maybe we'll find out later, but I definitely am going to put a dog ear on that because I want to know what the heck is going on here. And then the cherry on top of all of this cross-examination, Buchenik admits that he didn't even interview Higgins right away. Eventually, they do interview Higgins, and Higgins talks about his snowplow that was attached to his car that night, and that upon arriving at the Albert house, he actually plowed the driveway for them. When they asked Brian Higgins if he had seen anything as he was exiting out the house, right? They're trying to see like if he saw John laying there. Brian Higgins said he didn't because of the snow mound. What snow mound? I'm confused. Next, Jackson brought up surveillance video from the Waterfall. At 11:47 p.m., Brian Higgins and Brian Albert are seen play fighting. And yes, here's another clip where they looks like they're humping, right? But Buchenik, when he's asked like, hey, what are they doing? With a straight face, he says, oh, it looks like one dude is giving the other dude the Heimlich maneuver. This guy. Then there is talk about what Brian Higgins was doing as he exited the bar. But I can't really tell what the heck was going on there. Were he and John talking? Was that a middle finger? Honestly, I really can't tell. And it was just... I just kind of went over my head. I'm sure that the defense will bring it back for us, right? But wait, listen, y'all. If Higgins was a part of this conversation describing what they were doing at the bar, he would remind all of us that he's a combat veteran, okay? So don't forget that. All right, switching gears now from the Waterfall. Jackson tees up the video of Karen leaving John's house at 5:07 a.m. And as they pause the video, they zoom in on John's rear left tire. Yep, here's the video. Did you see that? Did you see that movement? Yes. Karen Reed hit John's car as she was backing up, and she hit his car with the right rear of her car. I hope that you guys are all connecting the dots. I'm sure you are. So the implication here from the defense is that at that moment, that was when Karen's taillight was broken, not necessarily at 12:45 a.m. when the prosecution or the Commonwealth is arguing that she hit John and left. While Buchenik was a hard nut to crack, he wouldn't admit to anything basically for almost 2 full days. But when asked if John's wheel moved in that video, he reluctantly admitted it did. Then, today, on day 13, there was one more bizarre moment. They asked what happened to Chloe, Brian Albert Sr.'s dog. And the answer was that she was rehomed. She was also renamed from Chloe to Kora. Apparently, someone didn't want that dog sticking around. Why? Well, it's unclear, but it definitely raised eyebrows. As Jackson wrapped up with today, he returned to the lack of proper documentation during this investigation. Reports not written, events documented 100 days, 300 days, 400 days, and even a whopping 581 days after an event. Why did it take so long? Buchenik just stared blankly into space. He was probably wishing that the ground would open up and swallow him whole. But no can do. He'll just have to go home for the weekend, realizing that he has to return on Monday for day 14, because that's where we left off today. So you're probably wondering, where are we? We have a supervisor who didn't track his own team, cringy, flirtatious text messages between Karen Reed and Brian Higgins, destroyed phones. I mean, were we supposed to hear that? Well, I heard it. We have uninvestigated call logs, 500-day delays, and a rehomed dog. Listen, y'all, it's not looking great for the prosecution. And for day 14, well, we're expecting more cross-examination. Right now, as a juror, I'm probably wondering if we will ever hear from Michael Proctor and Brian Higgins. Yikes. All right, alternates, we will see you on day 14. But until then, think like a juror and decide like one too.